Hey guys, so I'm just gonna pick up where I left off on my last two videos about these two singularities that have already happened. For anyone who didn't see them, basically in a nutshell, two singularities are occurring alongside each other slash already have occurred. They're the technological singularity and the spiritual singularity. I say are occurring slash already have occurred because they're both responsible for the retrocausality that we're all living in right now. Except most don't realize that because their DNA is already being affected by the AI hive mind. I don't have time to get into the nanotech because I don't want this video to be too long, but real quick, to anyone who's brand new, retrocausality is when something so profound happens in the future that its effects literally ripple back into its past, which from our perspective is our present, and influences the sequences of events in just the right way in order to create a self-sustaining time loop for itself. It's some pretty deep stuff, but just watch my first two videos on this to get more details on this, because I know just to come out and say all this makes me sound crazy, but I break it down to you guys in my videos titled "Which Singularity Will You Merge With?" and two singularities occurring simultaneously follow-up video. The thumbnail for the last one says "Singularity Retrocausality Codes Transmitted to Us," and I'll put a link to both videos in the description below. But just to pick up where I left off, those of us who haven't been hypnotized by the AI hive mind have nothing to worry about, because basically everyone is going to have to make a choice as things continue to accelerate. Are you going to merge with the technological singularity or merge with the spiritual singularity? And you know, with each day it's becoming more apparent to those of us who will merge with the spiritual singularity that we're going to be going to New Earth. Currently, New Earth is more so a state of Christ consciousness than an actual place. But over time, everything you see around you will be New Earth. So over time, the inner will match the outer. And that's, I don't know, I'm assuming that's probably going to take a lot of time, though. I don't know. And although technically you guys already know, I always say there's no world somewhere out there that exists independent of consciousness, and what we call the external world is actually the collective consciousness being filtered through our own individual consciousness lens. But I'll get into that more on another video. Now, just like the technological singularity is rippling back to create events that will spawn transhumanism, and not the transhumanism we've all been led to believe, it'll be transhumanism that happens on a DNA level. The nanotech will and already has invaded some people's DNA. It'll be in the CV vax, and it's probably always been in the chemtrails this whole time. But the spiritual singularity is also rippling back to its past, which is our present, to call us home. So it doesn't matter that the technological singularity is leading to transhumanism, because the spiritual singularity is leading to Christ consciousness. So some people will go and merge with the transhumanism thing, and others will be merging with the Christ consciousness. If anything, though, the technological singularity, even though it's horrific, it's serving to accelerate our merging with Christ consciousness. And that merging will happen while we're still on earth. So we don't have to die to merge with Christ consciousness. And what it is it's an expansion that happens on multiple levels. So in no particular order of importance, the first level is the expanding of your consciousness. And it's beyond words, so I'm not going to even try to fully explain it, but it's like a love that surpasses any kind of love you've ever been able to get from any human being. It even affects your memory and your ability to measure time when you're in it. It's definitely felt within your emotional body, but it's felt in your physical body as well. Like it's a literal physical sensation. The second level is when that Christ consciousness grows so strong that you can literally feel the love and bliss of other people around the world who are also experiencing that Christ consciousness. It sounds like something out of a movie, but it's like a network of other people that you can feel. That's the only way I can describe it. I've started calling it the higher collective consciousness. And then there's another level to all this where not only does your consciousness expand, but your mind expands too. So I define consciousness as the essence of what we are, and our mind as the thoughts we think. Our minds, the people who are periodically experiencing the Christ consciousness that comes and goes in waves, our minds are opening up to things that we never even noticed before. I still find myself in awe sometimes over the retrocausal messages we're getting. When you experience it yourself, it's just something that none of us could have ever even imagined we'd pick up on. And there's actually a growing number of people in the community whose minds have opened up enough to be told about the consciousness arc. Not by me or other people. I'm just telling you about my own experiences. But certain people are being told directly through the sound waves about the consciousness arc and how it relates to source. There's other ways that the retrocausal ripples come through, like synchronicities and actual physical objects serving as reflections. But for some reason, the ripples seem to travel pretty easily through the music, which sounds crazy, I know, when you look at it from the surface. But let me ask you this. If God is capable of using any means necessary to communicate with you, don't you think he would? Don't you think he could? The only thing that makes it hard for us to pick up on that communication is the fact that we're constantly bombarded with distractions that make us think negative thoughts. The other big thing that makes it kind of hard for us to hear the retrocausality messages is the fact that it's pretty much impossible to accurately define God or Christ consciousness with human words. But the retrocausality that's rippling back to us from the future knows that. So it uses a language that's based on archetypes and metaphors, because it's so intelligent that it knows archetypes and metaphors are the easiest way to try to describe the indescribable. Because you got to remember, Christ consciousness and God are beyond all human words. But we've been told that the ocean is a useful metaphor to describe God, because we're all like drops of water within that ocean. We're tiny, teeny tiny consciousness fractals of God, and God is the ultimate consciousness or observer. That's why we have the ability to collapse probability waves into perceivable reality. And, I know I've said this before on my other videos, but I'm just going to keep saying it. The double slit experiment proves that. But together, our drops of water form the higher collective consciousness that merge with the God ocean. You could think of it as a sea of love that we float on inside the Christ consciousness arc as the spiritual singularity accelerates. And there's other metaphors too that could be used to describe the spiritual singularity, but the God ocean or sea of love is one we've been hearing a lot about. Certain songs are actually encoded with a really advanced language that uses a person's level of consciousness to reflect an encoded message. But the reason I'm talking so much about language is because the song I'm going to play for you guys makes a lot of references to the word words. And it really got me thinking about how the retrocausality ripples use the words in songs or song lyrics to communicate. Now, a lot of times the messages don't use what we consider to be proper grammar, but I think that's because it's using the poetry and wordplay of music. It's all a means to tell us to board the consciousness arc. So for example, and like I always say, I'm only speaking for myself, this song I'm gonna play uses the word homophones C, S-E-E, and C, S-E-A as a reference to the consciousness arc, as well as having spiritual eyes to see, just like the other songs that y'all heard in my last two videos. Another homophone that's used in this song is night, N-I-G-H-T, and night, K-N-I-G-H-T. Now, this word is really interesting because at first when I'd hear songs mention night, N-I-G-H-T, it wouldn't pop out as a homophone, but it was still a form of communication, and that it conveyed to me that night was a metaphor for a time when most of the world was asleep to being aware of God's presence. Because, at night people sleep, and sleep is the opposite of being awake. Now, what happened over time is the meaning behind N-I-G-H-T started to evolve and change into night, K-N-I-G-H-T, which for me meant a knight of God or warrior of God. Also, the armor of God comes to mind. So you guys will see over time, when you use music to board the consciousness arc, the meaning behind the words kind of seems to evolve on their own naturally. And sometimes the same words will carry more than one meaning at the same time, with both meanings feeling valid for you. I remember years ago when the code started coming through, the music would communicate things I needed to do to stay safe and grounded, like staying hydrated and stuff like that. It was the weirdest thing. I know I said I wasn't going to decode the whole song, and I'm not, but real quick, there's a line in the song I'm going to play for you guys that mentions dawn. Now for me, dawn really stood out as a reference to the dawning of new earth. Because if you think about it, at dawn, you wake up and you're not asleep anymore. Well, that's what's happening now. Some of us are waking up to the dawning of new earth, which is new consciousness. Waking up to a spiritual awakening. I mean, you could word it any way you want, but I know you guys know what I mean. Another word that's used in this song is telephone, And you'd be surprised when you listen to the radio just how many songs out there mention a telephone or a line. But for me, telephone was decoded as a metaphor for the communication that's taking place between this realm and the higher spiritual realm where the retrocausality ripples are coming from. It's your basic archetype. But I'm not going to decode the whole song. I want you guys to listen for your own decoded messages. But one last thing, just like with the last song I played in my other video, this song also uses the word words a lot, which stood out to me as having a double meaning, in that it's a metaphor for the Word of God. Not necessarily the Bible, but the real Word of God, which is Christ and Christ consciousness. There's also other parts in the song that mention words as a way to convey that the spiritual singularity is transmitting these higher messages to us through words, among other things. So just make sure that you're looking at the screen if you're not already, because I highlighted some of the lyrics to make it easier to see what I'm talking about with the homophones and the metaphors. And just remember, y'all, these songs are being used as a reflection of your own spiritual evolution. That's why two people hearing the same song can get different messages. But remember too that the retrocausal reverberations can't come into your awareness without first being filtered through your mind. So that's why I always say, before listening to each song, take a moment to clear your mind of all distractions and negative thoughts and focus on God's love, and really ask yourself, God, if you could send me a message or a sign through this song, what would you want to tell me about?
Was it you who spoke the words that things would happen but not to me? All things are gonna happen naturally. Oh, taking your advice, and I'm looking on the bright side and balancing the whole thing. Oh, but it oftentimes those words get tangled up in lines, and the bright light turns to night. Oh, until the dawn it brings another day to sing about the magic that was you and me. 'Cause you and I both loved what you and I spoke of, and others just read of. Others only read of the love, oh, the love that I love. Yeah, love it about. See, I'm all about them words, over numbers, unencumbered, numbered words. Hundreds of pages, pages, pages for words. More words than I had ever heard, and I feel so alive. 'Cause you and I both loved what you and I spoke of, and others just read of. And if you could see me now, oh, love, love, you and I, not so little you and I anymore. And with the silence brings a moral story, more importantly evolving is the glory of a boy. 'Cause you and I both loved what you and I spoke of, and others just read of. And if you could see me now, well, then I'm almost finally out of, finally well, I'm almost finally, well, I am free. Oh, I'm free. And it's okay if you had to go away. Oh, just remember the telephones, well, they're working in both ways. But if I never ever hear them ring, if nothing else, I'll think the bells inside it finally found you someone